Welcome to Last Week Pod News. Here are last week's highlights from the Joe Rogan Experience.
In this episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, Joe sits down with legendary actor Ethan Hawke to discuss his early beginnings in theater and the lessons learned from his first major film role. Ethan Hawke and Joe Rogan discuss the surreal nature of meeting someone known through their work in real life. Rogan notes Hawke's extensive and successful movie career. Hawke recounts how he began acting at age 12 after his mother signed him up for a local acting class to fill his time. He describes his first professional play in New Jersey as a transformative experience, where he realized he could pursue acting as a career. Ethan discusses his first major film role at age 14 in the movie Explorers alongside River Phoenix. Despite high expectations, the film was a box office failure, which Hawke believes was a blessing in disguise as it kept him grounded. After the failure of his first film, Hawke returned to a normal life before getting cast in Dead Poets Society during college. The massive success of the film permanently changed his career path and provided him with a different perspective on fame. Joe and Ethan discuss the psychological toll of becoming famous at a young age, comparing it to bad concrete that can't be fixed once set. Hawke credits his early failure and supportive parents for helping him avoid the typical pitfalls of child stardom. Hawke reflects on his mother's decision to join the Peace Corps in her 40s and move to Romania, highlighting her pursuit of a meaningful life. He also notes his father's realistic approach to his career, which helped him value integrity over celebrity status. Hawke talks about the importance of having mentors and observing how legends like Jeff Bridges navigate their lives and careers. He emphasizes that seeing their dedication to the craft at a high level served as mental fuel for his own journey. Ethan Hawke and Joe Rogan discuss the paralyzing fear of having an idol reject your creative ideas. Hawke shares a touching story about the legendary Chris Christopherson, who once performed for a film crew after production wrapped, highlighting the singer's humility and impact on those around him. Rogan and Hawke explore the concept of hypnosis in performance, where a talented actor completely transforms into their character. Ethan explains that a successful film requires a collective, imaginative effort that allows the audience to forget the actor's celebrity and focus entirely on the role. Ethan describes the profound experience of losing his self-consciousness while performing, particularly when working with titans like Denzel Washington and Philip Seymour Hoffman. He notes that the best performances feel effortless and occur when the actor is fully present in the scene. Hawke recounts his experience acting alongside a wolf in the movie White Fang, calling the animal his best acting teacher. He argues that animals force human performers to be genuinely present because they can detect self-consciousness or a lack of focus instantly. The conversation turns to the detrimental impact of smartphones on human concentration and creativity. Ethan observes how technology disrupts the boredom necessary for deep thought and notes, that even his own focus suffers when he constantly checks his phone while reading. Hawke emphasizes the necessity of having permission to fail and building resilience against public criticism. He discusses Quentin Tarantino's public critique of Paul Dano to illustrate how directors' negative opinions are often subjective reflections of their own artistic visions rather than universal truths. Joe reflects on his early career in sitcoms like News Radio, explaining that he only did it for the money and never truly wanted to be an actor. He realized acting wasn't his passion and transitioned into hosting and stand-up to gain more creative freedom. Rogan discusses the early days of Fear Factor and the bizarre criticism it faced for being insensitive post 9/11. He defends the show as simple entertainment and argues that critics often attack successful projects because they lack their own creative contributions. Ethan Hawke discusses the challenges of his first television show, emphasizing the need to balance taking criticism with standing up for one's artistic vision. He shares a pivotal lesson from an early director about the power of admitting, "I don't know," which he believes opens the door to genuine growth and learning. Joe Rogan introduces the concept of the beginner's mind, noting how starting over in a new discipline requires shedding one's ego. Hawke adds that his transitions into writing and directing have forced him into this mindset, fostering a deeper respect for every role on a film set and aligning with the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen. Ethan describes the total immersion of acting, where his own identity disappears into the character's psyche, particularly on elaborate period sets. Joe parallels this with the profound perspective shift he felt while observing the stars above the clouds in Hawaii, noting how light pollution in cities robs many of this grounding experience. Rogan discusses the intense preparation fighters undergo in training camps, where isolation leads to total focus. When Hawke asks about the role of fear, Joe explains that being nervous is actually critical for performance, as complacency often leads to failure, a sentiment echoed in a clip of Mike Tyson. The pair explores why billionaires often seem miserable, concluding that chasing numbers and status is a never-ending cycle that lacks the fulfillment of simple joys. Hawke defines art as a genuine expression of human creativity that makes people feel alive, rather than a pretentious pursuit of prestige. Joe Rogan and Ethan Hawke discuss how achieving mastery in one discipline, such as acting or martial arts, allows a person to see universal truths in all things. Hawke explains that the discipline required for 100% focus on stage has taught him how to be more present in his daily life with his family and friends. Rogan reinforces this by quoting the famous samurai Miyamoto Musashi regarding the broad understanding of the way. Rogan asks about the level of improvisation Denzel Washington brought to the film Training Day. Hawke describes Washington as an astonishingly present actor who would absorb real-life details from police ride-alongs and store them in his computer to use in scenes months later. Ethan highlights the iconic King Kong monologue as a spontaneous explosion of brilliance that resulted from Washington's deep preparation and curiosity. Joe expresses his appreciation for Hawke's career and the depth of their conversation as they wrap up the podcast. Hawke reflects on the magic of watching a master like Washington work, noting that it inspires him to keep chasing a feeling of excellence in his own craft. The two share a final exchange of gratitude before the episode concludes. Now we move on to Joe Rogan's conversation with Cameron Hanes and Adam Greentree, where they dive into the high-tech advancements and ethical debates surrounding modern hunting. Cameron Hanes and Joe Rogan discuss the evolution of bow hunting equipment, moving from primitive targets to high-tech Garmin sights. They explore how these advancements affect the challenge and spirit of the sport, debating the line between helpful innovation and losing the primitive nature of the hunt. Hanes critiques the use of thermal optics in hunting, arguing that they undermine the traditional skill of glassing for game. The group also highlights the importance of mapping tools like OAX for navigating the backcountry safely, noting how confidence in navigation has increased hunter participation. The conversation turns to extreme long-range rifle shooting, featuring a record hit from over 4 miles away. Rogan and his guests marvel at the ballistics and technical expertise required to achieve such precision, noting that such feats require specialized equipment and significant practice. Adam Greentree and Hanes analyze aeromechanics, debating the trade-offs between using lighted nocks and maintaining perfect balance. They discuss broadhead designs and the transition from ancient flint tools to modern metal blades that offer superior lethality and consistency. Greentree explains his rigorous conditioning routine, which includes high-altitude training rooms and specialized exercise bikes like the Step PR. This preparation is essential for maintaining physical and mental clarity during difficult mountain hunts where oxygen is limited. The trio discusses the benefits of peptides like BPC-157 and stem cell treatments for injury recovery. Rogan expresses skepticism toward the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry, suggesting that profit often dictates which treatments are promoted over more effective natural alternatives. Joe Rogan and Cameron Hanes discuss their frustrations with the pharmaceutical industry and the suppression of effective treatments like stem cells. They argue that profit motives often hinder the adoption of beneficial medical advancements that cannot be easily patented. Rogan emphasizes the necessity of leg conditioning for successful elk hunting and discusses the physical toll of over-practicing archery. He details his personal experience with tendinitis and the effectiveness of trigger point massages for recovery after intense training. Adam Greentree reflects on how improving his mental and physical health made his hunting season more enjoyable and productive. Greentree notes that better fitness allowed him to navigate difficult terrain and stay mentally sharp without being overwhelmed by fatigue. Hanes shares his passion for mentoring new hunters and the satisfaction he derives from seeing others succeed in the field. He believes that sharing the hunting lifestyle fosters deep personal connections and helps others develop a greater appreciation for nature. Next, we join Joe Rogan as he sits down with Bret Weinstein to explore a groundbreaking hidden layer of Darwinian evolution and the complex genetic variables that shape life. Joe Rogan welcomes Bret Weinstein back to discuss a hidden layer of Darwinian evolution. Weinstein suggests that the current understanding of random mutations is insufficient to explain the complexity and diversity of biological life. He aims to explore how life overcomes the limitations of standard evolutionary models. Bret explains his hypothesis that evolution operates with an additional layer of complexity, much like a high-level programming language. He argues that this mechanism allows for more significant physical changes than simple protein coding mutations. This layer acts as a compiler that translates complex biological needs into genetic instructions. Weinstein describes telomeres and repetitive DNA sequences as integers or variables stored within the genome. He believes these numbers dictate developmental phenomena like bone length, allowing selection to efficiently explore new forms. By adjusting these variables, organisms can adapt their morphology without needing entirely new genes. Joe asks how a ground-dwelling creature could eventually evolve the ability to fly. Bret uses the evolution of bat wings and gliding squirrels to illustrate how small, incremental advantages can bridge massive evolutionary gaps. He notes that these transitions are often distributional changes in existing molecules rather than completely new genetic creations. Bret introduces the concept of explorer modes, which are biological mechanisms that allow evolution to search design space more effectively. He suggests that consciousness itself might be one of these modes for discovering new survival strategies. This approach allows selection to find beneficial forms in a way that is not entirely random. The discussion turns to cultural evolution and the concept of memes as defined by Richard Dawkins. Weinstein explains that human culture provides a way to evolve more rapidly than the genetic level allows. This cultural layer allows human societies to adapt to new environments and challenges without waiting for genetic mutations. Bret discusses the dysfunction of modern academic institutions and how they have failed to update evolutionary models since the 1970s. He highlights the disconnect between developmental biology and evolutionary theory as a major hurdle in scientific progress. Weinstein believes that a synthesis of these fields is necessary to truly understand biological innovation. Joe Rogan and Bret Weinstein discuss apex predators like crocodiles and dragonflies that have remained unchanged for millions of years due to their highly effective designs. Weinstein contrasts this with human evolution, where cultural transmission acts as a campfire for parallel processing, allowing the species to adapt rapidly to diverse environments. Rogan highlights concerns about microplastics and phthalates acting as endocrine disruptors in the modern environment. Bret notes that these chemicals are poisoning human biology, leading to measurable decreases in testosterone and fertility rates across recent generations. Weinstein introduces the concept of hypernovelty, where technological advancements occur too quickly for humans to metabolize or adapt to wisely. He suggests that society must insulate young people from the constant influx of new revolutions, such as AI and social media, to maintain developmental stability. The discussion shifts to how rapid change has eliminated true adults who possess the wisdom to navigate the current world. Joe and Bret explore how the sexual revolution and birth control have fundamentally altered the central organizing principles of civilization, potentially leading to social fragmentation. Rogan and his guests debate the implications of universal basic income, fearing it may create a dependent population. Weinstein argues that removing the necessity of struggle could infantilize society and strip individuals of their sense of purpose. Bret addresses the disruption of functional relationships by unrealistic portrayals of sex and pornography and the impending rise of AI sex robots. He emphasizes the importance of the yin-yang complementarity in marriage, which serves as a vital barometer for human development and social stability. Joe Rogan recounts a conversation with Sam Harris regarding the necessity of the COVID-19 vaccine. Rogan argued that it was illogical for him to get vaccinated after already recovering from a mild case of the virus. He and Bret Weinstein criticize Harris's refusal to acknowledge natural immunity. Weinstein argues that public health officials were aware that natural immunity was the most effective protection. He suggests that in some cases, vaccination after recovery could actually make an individual more vulnerable to disease by misdirecting the immune system's focus. Bret claims that experts provided advice that was not analytically robust. Rogan discusses an interaction with Peter Hotez, where the expert admitted to having a poor diet and not exercising. Joe finds it hypocritical for public health experts to ignore basic metabolic health and physical robustness while strictly promoting medical interventions. He emphasizes that a healthy body is the primary defense against disease. The pair discusses the history of fraudulent scientific studies being used to push dangerous drugs for profit. Rogan cites the use of AZT during the AIDS pandemic as a major example of this phenomenon. He explains that the drug was repurposed despite its high toxicity because it was already owned and ready for sale. Weinstein and Rogan explore pandemic tabletop exercises like Event 201 and Crimson Contagion. They find the timing of these simulations suspicious, as they occurred shortly before the actual outbreak. Joe notes that these exercises often focused heavily on controlling narratives and censoring misinformation. Bret questions the true motivation behind the vaccine campaign, noting that if it were purely about money, an inert shot would have been safer and more profitable. He suggests there may be a deeper purpose behind using the novel mRNA platform. Weinstein believes the public was intentionally primed to accept these interventions through fear. Weinstein references Michael Burry and the book The Great Taking by David Webb to discuss systemic risks in the financial markets. He explains that the shift from physical to digital stock certificates has fundamentally changed ownership rights. Bret warns that the public's assets may be vulnerable in the event of a major financial collapse. Bret Weinstein explains how the transition from physical stock certificates to digital agreements has created a system where stocks can be used as collateral by institutions. This leaves individual investors vulnerable if the market becomes unstable. Weinstein warns that these contingency clauses could lead to investors losing their assets during a financial crisis. Bret expresses fear that a banking collapse could lead to the government issuing FDIC insurance payments through central bank digital currencies. He argues this would give the state immense power to control and monitor individual spending. Weinstein suggests that this transition could be used to enforce political compliance. Joe Rogan notes the removal of jury trials in the UK, while Weinstein comments on how the lack of a strong constitution allows for the suppression of speech. They discuss the societal consequences of being unable to openly address immigration and crime issues. Weinstein highlights cases where individuals have been jailed for their speech in Ireland and the UK. Rogan brings up Sam Harris's controversial stance on the Hunter Biden laptop story. Weinstein argues that the corruption within the Biden family is systemic and has significant geopolitical implications. They discuss the ties between the Biden family's business dealings and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Weinstein critiques the idea of blanket presidential pardons, particularly concerning Dr. Anthony Fauci. He suggests that such pardons undermine the principle of equal protection under the law. Bret also touches on the controversies surrounding gain-of-function research and Fauci's alleged involvement.
That's everything you need to know from last week's episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience. Let me know in the comments which episode you are watching next. If you found this summary helpful, please like the video and subscribe for more podcast highlights.